Yo, what's good YouTube? It's boardzy, and this is going to be a review of the first wireless S2 clone, the Fantech Helios 2 Pro XD3 V3. Like, please just cut that out of the name. Like, I never knew this mouse's name, but yeah, it's the Helios 2 Pro. And really, this is close to a one-to-one clone of the Zowie S2. I will get into the minor differences. But yeah, really, without any shadow of doubt, this is the closest wireless mouse we've seen to the Zowie S2, and it also comes in at an extremely good price, $85 with a 4K dongle included. And yeah, it is 55 grams, but obviously the specs don't tell the whole story, and I will just get into how this mouse feels, how it performs, all of that. And when compared to a Zowie mouse, I guess one of the first things is going to be build quality. I'm not going to say this feels rock solid. If I do squeeze the mouse like this, I can feel the plastic like flexing inwards on the shell, but it's not really concerning. And even when I try to apply the most pressure I can while gripping the mouse, I can't get any kind of flex. So it just won't have the rock solid sides of a Zowie mouse. And really, even when compared to my GPX V2 or like the new Pulsar mice, there is just a little bit more flexing on the plastic of the Helios. Again, not a deal breaker, not the end of the world, not a real concern, but just worth mentioning. And the coating is another thing that I've had this mouse for a long time, over a month, so I have given it like proper time. The coating is just very weird. It's matte, but it's not slippery, but it's also not grippy whatsoever. It's not comparable to like really any of these rubberized style coatings. I would say it's a bit worse and less grippy than a Zowie coating, but it's also like not bad, and my fingers are never slipping around. I always have a solid grip of the mouse, but it's just not a rubberized coating. So yeah, the coating is pretty interesting and unique. It doesn't compare to anything, but I also just don't think it's the raw plastic. Like, I do think there is some type of just weird coating on there. Now, next up is going to be the mouse's switches, which are actually TTC Gold opticals, which I didn't know these existed until this mouse came out. As far as I know, it's the first implementation to feature TTC Golds, and the click quality was something that kind of concerned me at first because my right click does have a lot of pre-travel, a lot of wobble, a good amount of post-travel, but really, like, when I'm actually gripping the mouse, just clicking, it does feel like a somewhat cheap implementation still. It's not mushy. These are honestly some of the least mushy optical switches I've felt. But yeah, I can't really say I had any problems with the lightness of these. They do have a somewhat stiff feeling of tactility, which is something you don't often get with opticals. They really don't come anywhere close to being too heavy. So all in all, I would say it's a solid implementation, just not the most refined like feeling clicks ever. But I really didn't have any problems in, for example, like static scenarios on Kovacs. I didn't enjoy like spamming these for editing on Fortnite as much. I just really didn't love this mouse for Fortnite. I think the side buttons may have factored into that as well. But yeah, it's just like, it's a really good, really safe design. The shape I will talk about a bit more. Because I think the one big or not even big difference, but the one difference I can notice, God, I really hate this camera, is the flare when you actually place your thumb on the mouse. Like, when I grip the Zowie S2, it feels like my thumb has just more curvature to like kind of sink itself into versus the Fantech Helios 2 Pro, where I just don't feel like it flares out kind of as significantly. So that's the one thing that I think S2 users will probably notice as a difference. Another thing I've preached when it comes to these mice with very similar shapes is that the coating is going to affect the way you grip it. And what I personally notice is that the hump on the Fantech mouse is just a lot less stable and locked into my palm compared to a Zowie mouse. So it does ultimately feel like a different mouse ever so slightly when I'm using it. It doesn't have the exact same nuances and just feeling that a Zowie mouse has, but that's not exactly what this is trying to offer. I think this is more of just like a budget-ish high-end mouse at an affordable price with a safe Zowie shape. So yeah, I'm not really calling it bad, but I do feel like if you are a true like Zowie S2 diehard, that waiting out for Zowie to eventually do a wireless version might satisfy you a bit more. One thing for me was the side buttons compared to the S2. I just enjoyed the design a lot less. I would have liked to see something similar with the larger style of side buttons. And you can say like, yeah, the GPX, like Pulsar mice, they have similar size side buttons to this. But I don't know, like when I use these, they don't just seem to protrude out as easily compared to something like a Pulsar. They're not quite as light. The positioning is pretty high up, and mouse 4 is just not easily accessible for me when I'm claw gripping it, compared to something like the S2, where I feel like my thumb is almost positioned under the side buttons, which just helps me keep a good grip on the mouse. So I would rate the side buttons as kind of meh tier. And of course, if you play anything besides Fortnite where you just don't need to be hitting the side buttons while aiming, that's going to be a lot less of something to really consider. But people have been like coming at me for my side button analysis. Like, it's just something I've always done, and when side buttons are done right, it's a beautiful thing. So why not try to steer companies in that direction? Next thing I want to talk about is the wireless, because while this mouse is 4K compatible, I have had issues with 4K, and I've watched a few of the other reviews, not all of them, so I'm not sure if this is widely mentioned, but I did not see anything reported. And the clip I'm about to show either happened on 2K or 4K, I honestly don't remember, but my mouse really just bugged out in the middle of a Kovacs run, and whenever I try to run it on 4K and play something like Fortnite, I just have a much worse mouse experience. It feels like there's added input lag and just choppiness compared to 2K, so I really don't know what this comes down to, but it's certainly not my PC, because pretty much every mouse on my desk is 4K, and the only one I was having issues with was the Fantech Helios. And yeah, I do believe this is a pre-production unit. I did update the firmware when I got the mouse, but I'm not sure if there's already an update done that may have addressed this issue. But really, when I gamed on 2K, it felt perfectly fine. I'm not going to say it felt as good as like the Viper Mini Signatures implementation, but it was a solid wireless feeling. I did not feel like there were any issues. It obviously does have a 3395 sensor. I don't believe it's on the latest Nordic MCU, but I honestly don't fucking know the chip number off the top of my head. Yeah, honestly, I just get good, not great vibes from this mouse. And I know bringing up vibes in a mouse review, you might feel like that's cringe, but it's just, I've used this mouse on and off for around a month. It's not exactly an S2 in hand. Like I said, it just feels a bit different with the flaring out. The hump seems to be a little bit flatter. The coating is different. It does weigh in at 55 grams. I'll say the balancing, it's definitely a bit catered towards the back. Like if you do fingertip this mouse, which is awkward to do, you can notice the back like kind of flinging around a bit. But when you're claw gripping and applying pressure, the weight balancing is not going to feel off. But in general, since it is a somewhat smaller mouse, I guess it just does feel a bit dense for the size. Like it does not feel noticeably lighter than a GPX, which comes in around 60 grams. But if you're just expecting a solid feeling lightweight mouse, that's pretty much what you're going to get. There's a ton of goodies in the box, if that is what you care for, like grip tape, multiple sets of skates. So it's objectively not a bad value at $85 compared to the rest of the market, but it's just not something I'm going to come back to. I don't feel like it's really elite in any aspect, but like I said, it's just a solid package. It has Bluetooth as well. The stock skates, I really just didn't feel any type of way about them. They just were what they were. That's how I feel about a lot of stock skates now, because they're getting to the point where they're pretty good. The TTC Gold opticals are interesting. Like I said, not the highest caliber click implementation, but they performed fine. They were adequately spammable. But yeah, I don't think Fantech is a company that's trying to make like the cream of the crop, like enthusiast catered mice, but this is still a pretty solid offering if you are expecting like S2 inspired small claw grip shape. So yeah, this mouse, despite the good and bad I've had to say about it, is not going to get the seal of approval, and I'm going to rework the way the seal of approval works starting next year, because pretty much every mouse is what, like, quality-wise and specs-wise getting to the point where they could qualify, but if it's not something that I'm really using, if it's something where I'm criticizing most of the features, it's just not going to get the seal of approval. But yeah, still, nonetheless, this is a solid pickup if you are on a more limited budget. I would honestly say extend that $85 budget to $100 and maybe invest in a Pulsar or a Lamzu mouse. But I do know a lot of Fantech's audience is Southeast Asian, where there aren't as many good options, especially not at the cheap prices that Fantech might seemingly go for. So I am aware of that audience, but I'm obviously American, using enthusiast mice in the country where they are easiest to be obtained in. So yeah, that is something about perspective. But that's going to be all. Leave a like and sub if you enjoyed, and peace.